Hello, folks. This is the first part of 9.1 that we went over yesterday. I just want to make sure you guys are on board with everything and that you are familiar with the circle part. I'm going to go into parabolas tomorrow, and we'll talk about that during our Zoom session. But here's a recap of circles. So a circle, by definition, is a set of all points in a plane that's equidistant from a fixed point called the center. Guys, equidistant just means the same distance. The distance from the center of a circle, so from the center here to the outside, to any point that lies on the circle, is our radius. So to find out how far that is, you use the distance formula to find out how long that is. The standard form for the equation of a circle is right here. Just like if we had y equals mx plus b. I said y equals mx plus b, right? That's the equation of a line. Your y and your x in standard form stay as constants. Then our slope and our y-intercept is identified there. In the circle formula, your x here stays as a constant and your y stays as a constant. Your h and your k is your center, and then your radius squared is at the end here. So if I gave you, let me give you some examples. Like if I say x plus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 16. Or I said x squared plus y squared equals 100. Or if I said x minus 12 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals, 12. All right, so if I said to you guys, what is the center of the circle and what is the radius? So your h and your k are here. Now remember, in the standard formula, there's a minus sign here. That means when you take the center out, you have to change the sign. And I'll show you why in a second when we do a little more of the problems. But my center here would be at -2, +3, and my radius would be square root of 16 is 4. Now, some people might say, how come my answer is not plus or minus? Well, the radius measures a distance, and we don't talk about distance in negative numbers. So here in number 2, this isn't a trick question. You literally look and say, okay, well, what number is being added or subtracted to the x? Well, that's 0. What number is being added or subtracted to the y? That's 0. So your circle here is centered at the origin, and your radius is at 10, or your radius is 10 units. For my third one, if I want to know the center, I'm going to say it's at +12, -4, and my radius is the square root of 12. If we were in class, I would have you break that down on a multiple choice test or question. If it's square root of 12, you leave it. If not, if you need to break it down, then you can rewrite this as the square root of 12 is 4 times 3. The square root of 4 is 2, so that comes out. So your radius here, the square root of 12, is the same as 2 root 3. So in this case here, they're giving me some information. They're saying, okay, there's a point on the circle, and here's the center. Well, in order to write the equation of a circle, you need to have the center and the radius. All right, they already told me that my center is at -2, -3. I need to find the radius. So if there's not a picture drawn, go ahead and draw one. Obviously, they drew one here for us. So I need to know the measurement here, the distance from the center to any point that lies on the circle. They gave me that point of 1, 4. So I'm just going to use my distance formula. And I'm going to say, okay, keep your x's together. Order doesn't matter. Just make sure you keep them together. So I'm going to say -2 minus 1 squared plus, keep your y's together, -3 minus 4 squared. So this becomes -3 squared plus -7 squared. So I have 9 plus 49, which gives me the square root of 58. So I now know that my radius is the square root of 58. So to write the equation of our circle in standard form, remind yourself the equation of a circle in standard form is x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals radius squared. So fill in what you got. X minus, well, the center is at -2. So if you guys notice here, Two negatives make a positive, so this would be x plus 2 squared. That's why when we are given the equation and we have to take the center out, that's why the signs change. It's always going to be the opposite when the equation's given to you. So then I have plus y minus, well, the y coordinate of the center is at negative 3. So this becomes y plus 3 squared. And then my radius is the square root of 58 squared. Well, when you square a square root, that cancels out, so this just becomes 58. And there's the equation of your circle. You need to have the center and you need to have the radius in order to write the equation. If you don't have that, you got to find it. All right, when we come to this next example, you notice this looks a little different. Yes, they give me a picture, but I don't need it right now. It says sketch the circle, given the equation, identify its center and its radius. This is not written in the center radius form where I can just look and say, oh, there's the center, there's the radius. I can make it be in that form. And what we're going to do here is we're going to complete the square. It's a super easy process. You guys have all seen this before in Algebra 2. Some of you even maybe in Algebra 1. But what we're going to do is we're going to group our x's together and our y's together. We're going to move that constant over. So the first thing I'm going to say is, okay, x squared minus 6x plus, and then I'm going to leave a space. Then I have, I'll change colors. So I'll go plus y squared minus 2y plus space equals. When I move that positive 6 over, I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides, so I have negative 6. And then I'm going to put these two little lines here, and you'll see why in just one second. When we complete the square, you're solving an equation. So what you do to the left-hand side, you have to do to the right-hand side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the coefficient of x, which is negative 6. I'm going to divide it by 2, and I get negative 3. Okay, so to complete the square, to figure out what goes right here, you have to square this number. So negative 3 squared is 9. If you're adding 9 to the left-hand side, you have to add 9 to the right-hand side. So now we're going to complete the square over here with the y. So I'm going to take the coefficient of y, which is negative 2, divide it by 2, and I get negative 1. In order to complete the square, you square that number. So negative 1 squared is 1. If I add 1 to the left-hand side, I have to add 1 to the right-hand side. Okay? Now we're just going to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to take my x's, and I'm going to simplify this. I can factor this. When I factor this, I get, what are the two numbers that, what are the factors of 9 that multiply to give me a positive 9, sorry, but add to give me negative 3? Oh my goodness, sorry, let me repeat that. What are the factors of 9 that multiply to give me a positive 9, but add to give me a negative 6? And that's going to be negative 3 and negative 3. X minus 3, x minus 3. I can rewrite that as x minus 3 quantity squared. Now I do the same thing with the y's. I'm going to factor the y. And I'm going to say, okay, what are the factors of y, of 1, that multiply to give me a positive 1, but when I add them, I get a negative 2. That would be negative 1 and negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. Negative 1 and negative 1 is negative 2. And I can rewrite that, guys, as y minus 1 quantity squared. Then I still have that equal sign. I can't forget about what was on the other side. So I have negative 6 and 9 gives me 3, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So I have now written this right up here. We've written this as an equation of the circle in center radius form. So when I'm asked to identify the center and the radius, I know that my center is at positive 3, positive 1, and my radius is 2. And that's how that works for completing the square. So if you have a question about that, I'll do another example tomorrow if you guys have a question. And last thing we're going to talk about here is intercepts. Anytime we're finding x and y intercepts, you're just plugging in 0. Plug in 0 for x to find the y intercept. Plug in 0 for y to find the x. So let's do that. Plug in 0 right here for x. I'm going to find the y intercept. So we just use our algebra skills that we're all so good at. So I simplify this. I have negative 4 squared plus, finish this all out, negative 4 squared is 16 plus y minus 2 quantity squared equals 16. We're going to subtract 16 from both sides. So I get y minus 2 quantity squared equals 0. Now, if I'm trying to solve for y, I'm not going to factor this out. I'm trying to simplify. So I want to undo the squared. So the opposite of squaring a number is taking the square root. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Now, guys, when you actually physically put the square root on, you put a plus or minus in front of your answer. Is there such thing as a positive or negative 0? No. So you don't need it in this case. But you will in future cases. So just remember that when you actually put the square root on, you have to have the plus or minus there. I can erase this. There we go. So when I go to solve this, I'm simply going to just add 2 to both sides, and I get y equals 2. So I found out that my intercept when x is 0, y is 2. That's where it's going to cross my y-axis. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but instead of putting 0 in for x, I'm going to put it in for y. So I have x minus 4 quantity squared plus 0 minus 2 quantity squared equals 16. And then we just go through the whole simplifying process. X minus 4 quantity squared plus negative 2 squared equals 16. So x minus 4 quantity squared plus negative 2 squared is 4 equals 16. Subtract 4 from both sides, and I get x minus 4 squared equals 12. Now again, we're trying to solve for x. We're trying to simplify. So instead of squaring a number, the opposite would be to take the square root. So if I take the square root of this side, I have to take the square root of this side. And since I physically put the square root on top, I need to say, hey, this could be plus or minus. So I have x minus 4 equals plus or minus. Okay, plus minus 12. I'm just going to leave it like that in a second, and I will simplify it in just a second. So now we're going to get x by itself, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I prefer that you guys write the whole number first. So we have x equals 4 plus or minus root 12. Now, to simplify root 12 is the same as 4 times 3, so it would be 2 root 3. So you have 2 intercepts here. You have one at 4 plus 2 root 3, and you have one at 4 minus 2 root 3. Just an irrational number, not great. If you were going to write it as an intercept, it would be 4 plus 2 root 3, comma 0, and 4 minus 2 root 3, comma 0. And there's your x-intercept. So there you go. Tomorrow, I will teach you guys about parabolas, our good old parabolas, and that will be the last lesson before the end of the year and your final quiz. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.